Now, the case of an arts therapist who was suspended after allegations of naked sessions and drug taking with his clients has revealed a loophole in the law governing therapy. Derek Gale is still advertising his services as a psychotherapist and counsellor. There's no professional regulation covering such practitioners and therefore, if guilty, they cannot be struck off, as doctors and nurses can. Our social affairs correspondent Victoria MacDonald has this report, as the government has been promising action to remedy this for more than a decade.
Derek Gale was, until recently, allowed to call himself an art therapist.
Obviously, he's walking around mostly undressed at another psychodrama workshop.
Now 6 former clients have claimed that he ran naked group sessions, ingratiated himself into the will of one, encouraged them to experiment with drugs, particularly cannabis. He even gave out these baseball caps. It was a catchphrase, apparently. Ian Johnson went to Mr. Gale in 1991 for some counselling after a traumatic relationship breakup. 15 years and thousands of pounds later, he finally left.
It all starts off very slowly. So I originally went for one-on-one sessions with him over a very specific issue that I had around the breakup of a relationship. Before long, I find that we're now discussing all sorts of things from my childhood, my relationship with my parents, which wasn't great, but I think for the entire course of my time with Derek, there was a lot of times when he referred to my mother as evil and so on, and he caused that rift to remain for 14, 15 years. So he divides you from your families. He, to some extent, tries to divide you off from friends outside of the group as well.
It was one-to-one and group therapy, a sort of family created with Derek Gale describing himself as the daddy. But earlier this year, at a hearing of the Health Professions Council, the HPC, it was claimed he posed a significant potential risk of harm to clients. This regulatory body agreed enough to order an interim suspension before a full hearing next year. Yet there's a loophole in the law. Out of this house in Loughton, Essex, that flat-roofed annex at the back built by clients for free, Mr. Gale is still able to work as anything other than an arts therapist. Do that and he risks a £5,000 fine. He can, and does though, advertise his skills on the internet in psychotherapy, voice work, couples therapy, because nobody regulates those titles. In a statement, Mr. Gale said,
"Whilst I would very much like to provide my side of the story, I've been advised that because the case is currently pending before the Health Professions Council, it would be inappropriate for me to give an interview or a statement in rebuttal. I will therefore make no comment at this time."
Howard Martin, whose partner was a former client of Mr. Gale, alleges he broke the first rule of therapy.
He was going on holiday with clients. He was constantly creating new reasons for them to continue with their therapies. He was having them renovate his property. He was ingratiating themselves into every aspect of their lives. A good psychotherapist, a good counsellor, one of the first rules they lay down to you when you go to see them is the supermarket rule, which is, if I see you in a supermarket, I will not acknowledge you. I will walk away from you. If you acknowledge me in the supermarket, I will say, "Good morning." I will not use your name. I will walk, and then I will turn and walk away from you. It is not that I am being rude. It is the fact that I am protecting your privacy.
Derek Gale's interim HPC suspension was renewed this week, and sometime next year at a full hearing he will be able to defend himself. But what his case has highlighted is the deep flaws in the regulatory system. A doctor or a nurse can't work while suspended or if they've been struck off. A therapist can just change their title. It's also shown that there is no one body to prevent people setting themselves up as a psychologist or psychotherapist, putting up a nameplate and starting work. The HPC currently regulates just 13 health professions, from podiatrists to paramedics and, of course, art therapists. That's it, the only professions they have legal control over. Do you think that you're toothless?
I don't think we are toothless, and it's not just my view. We report to Parliament, we are subject to the health committees, etc. I think we have strong and appropriate legislation to make sure that those health professionals that we regulate use the appropriate standards. If they don't use the appropriate standards, whether it's ethical standards or competence standards, we have the powers to remove those individuals from the register.
But this lack of regulation has meant frustration for patients and clients wanting redress when something has gone wrong. One charity called Catalyst, which helps those who claim to have been abused, say all attempts to change the law have failed. So at least 30 cases have ended up in court over the past 8 years, involving cults, therapists or healers.
I think the question of regulating by using definitions of what is therapy and what isn't is always going to be very limited. The real answer is to set down a code of conduct which is rigidly enforced. Somebody breaching it would immediately be suspended from doing any professional work in the field, and it should be a criminal offence if they ever start practising again.
Ian Johnson is angry at the legal loophole which allows Mr Gale to advertise as a counsellor and psychotherapist while suspended as an art therapist. But equally frustrating is more than a decade of government promises to regulate these professions. The latest date for a new law is now 2009.
Victoria MacDonald reports.